Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric, this being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of City on a Hill. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, the big conversation is obviously the whole situation with Raina. Obviously, a lot of people are trying to keep this from being a powder keg situation, because obviously you see that on Grace's side of things where she's trying to get Raina to actually have a funeral so they can, because if they don't, they need the city needs to grieve and mourn before they burst into a full-blown rage. So for her, this is her way of trying to de-escalate things from turning wild, because if protests could turn easily violent, and she wants there to be protests, but not something that could not while people are filled with rage. She'd rather it be a mourning type of protest. So obviously this Raina situation, especially with the youth strike force kind of smack dab in the middle of it, because they're being blamed, because obviously the FBI, more so in particular, you have Jackie leading kind of the crusade against them, saying they planted the evidence, which is crazy considering none of them did. Obviously, we know it's Marco who did it, so it's kind of interesting that we got throats being slashed kind of over neither there's a little wrong in every department, but none of them are the ones who planted the evidence. So that's a sad thing behind it. Obviously, they were able to get the girl Madeline released, the one who was claimed to have the drugs on her. Obviously Jackie kept his end of the deal, but obviously for DeCourcy, it's it doesn't matter if he was am I supposed to just put he's a hero today, but am I supposed to put past everything he did? The fact is Hank's still dead because of it. It's and Siobhan's if Hank was here, he'd tell you don't look to the past, kind of look fight for the present, fight presently so you can look towards the future. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. And since we're under the DeCourcy and Siobhan situation, obviously she's trying to have a baby. I even love the whole thing, the doctor says, give DeCourcy Robitussin because it might help with the motility and stuff like that. And he's like, well, and I think this speaks volumes. He's like, whoa, am I the problem? He took such offense to it. I mean, because I think that can, I think it can strike the male ego being I'm the reason we can't, because it's if your boys don't swim to the occasion, you kind of feel it can psychologically it can be emasculating a little bit. So that response made me go it can come off that way. So it's whoa, you're telling me it's my fault? It's just, because obviously for Siobhan, she wants to have a baby before it's too late, because obviously she's worried that if the test results don't come back the right way, she's does that trying to say I can't have a kid? She wants to have a family. But obviously DeCourcy's the one that keeps pushing it off more and more, because yes, they both want careers, but it's if they keep waiting forever and ever, if she keeps having to wait for DeCourcy, then there's no telling. For him, it's I want work to kind of settle down first. When I'm in a good place, then we can have kids. And she's well, if that's going to be the case, it'll be 50 years before we have another, or never end up having a kid, and for DeCourcy, he talks about his upbringing, and she's oh, there we go again. He's yes. The fact is, he made a promise that he wasn't going to have a kid until he was able to take care of him and her, because it's bringing a kid up in this type of world until things are kind of copacetic, and I think at least a little more fair. It's was bringing up a kid in this type of world, so you can kind of get where he's coming from, but you also get where Siobhan's coming from. It's sadly, ladies have a legitimate time clock of you kind of have to have a kid now, especially if you want what she wants, where she wants to have a career, she wants to have this, but she also wants to have a family. It's juggling all that. It's it's sad, you do have to kind of pick, you do have to kind of jump on that, if you're a lady that wants a family. That's a sad, messed up biological aspect to that whole situation. But what's interesting, because obviously we have Jackie trying to dig up dirt on DeCourcy so he could start talking to people from college. There was a woman he dated, Sierra. DeCourcy tried to make it seem not DeCourcy. Jackie made it seem they were dating at the time he was still with Siobhan at the time. So he's trying to make it seem something sleazy's going on, but Sierra wasn't biting. She would, or at the very least, she initially wasn't going, but I guess he finally got words in that kind of made her decide to talk. So he's planning on using that. So he goes to Josh, is hey, you're backing Siobhan, right? Oh yeah, right, pick the better half. Oh, you should hear all this stuff about DeCourcy. And he's the abortion, and it's that's what it was about. it's like, yeah, he's like, I get you're trying to rile up some BS. It's like, you didn't even get the whole story yet because, you know, she told the story to make it seem like he's a bad guy. It's like the true story is her father made her get the abortion, and of course he didn't know about it until afterwards. So I wonder, does that I'm wondering, does Siobhan know? Because she probably doesn't. Probably not something you want to probably talk about, especially when you're trying to have the conversation of having kids yourself. That's where I'm thinking it's probably definitely going to get a little murky. We'll see. But also, like, Jackie thought he had an upper hand, and it just, Josh kind of smacked it out of his hand to be like, nope, you got nothing. And obviously he gets pissed, throws a cigarette in his drink, and Josh is like, fucking asshole. It's like, those two words sum up Jackie pretty nicely. But of course he is trying to tie Jackie back to the whole situation with Holly Gunner. Obviously he has no evidence, but he's saying I will. And obviously he's talking, because like everyone's having conversations with Guy. You have Jackie having a talk with him, being like, oh yeah, remember that young hot piece of ass? I don't want your wife finding out about that. And it's like trying to get his way on this whole situation. But then, like, of course, he brings this up, which Guy's like, all right, fine, let's do it. Jackie wants to do some ass play, fine. He'll be the one that gets fucked. No safe word, no Vaseline. I quoted the episode. I thought that was interesting. Because we do see that kind of play out, because Chris later on is trying to, like, he ends up tracking down a dude. His nickname is Killer J. And try to get, like, because about Raina's death. And he's like, dude, whose territory was that in? So it's kind of like you're barking up the wrong tree. So he basically sends Chris the other way. And so Chris ends up ultimately arresting Kelvin, which is like, it's sad because like that whole thing went about because Marco got too heated, being like, oh, Anton said whenever we see that dude, like, you know, deal with him. But obviously it was set up. Kelvin gets arrested. Obviously, Grace doesn't like that because for her, it's like, I could lose this, and this. And Siobhan is like, well, I'll talk to the court. She's like, there was a day when mothers would handle that stuff and wouldn't sit on their hands and wait for their husbands, which is like, that's going to lead to even more like issues. I mean, you can see where she was coming from at the same time, because for her, she looks at it as like, this is racial profiling. They pick up my son's like, to be fair, unbeknownst to you, your son, and the opening credits did kind of confirm what because I kept flipping back and forth and not knowing whether she knew or not. She doesn't know. And it's like, sad thing is, like, the cops are on the right trail. It's just you're thinking, because of the heated situation, the state the city's in right now, like, I mean, under normal circumstances would be. Sadly, they are barking up the right tree. It's just, you wouldn't believe that, because it's just like they kind of arrested Calvin out of nowhere. To be fair, he did dump the gun, so it's not like they had anything on him. But then Siobhan showing up what she did, who knows if Kelvin would have broke, because he feels a more remorse about it, because even he's like, yo, Anton, don't you feel anything about Raina? It's like, yeah, I mean, it's not our fault. She lived where she lived. It's like, wait, what? We're the ones blowing up the spot, like, shooting back and forth. It's like, how is that not on us? Like, the fact is, I guess, like, he tries to justify by being like, it's the area she chose to live. It's like, she's an 11-year-old girl. Like, she has any, it's like, it's just, it is what it is. Life happens. Like, it's just, oh, she shouldn't have lived in that spot. What the hell are you talking about, dude? It's just, I think it's just to ease his own guilty conscience. You could, it seems like it might be eating away at him, but even if it is, it seems like he's able to kind of compartmentalize more than Kelvin is. But the reason why I was also kind of going down that route is because Jackie corners Chris in the elevator and be like, oh yeah, the DA's office, they're kind of doing their own investigation. And Chris is like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, they're looking to kind of blame someone as long as the blame isn't heading towards the DA office. So it's like, he needs a scapegoat. Obviously, guys like, don't let it be anyone from my office. Like, Jackie's maneuvering, manipulating this situation to kind of pit both sides against each other, you know, just so he can come out on top. More so than anything, it's just so he can fuck DeCourcy. Because it's like, you know, and that ends up being that conversation between them, you know, and even him being like, yeah, because of the youth strike force thing, this is bigger than you and me now. And DeCourcy's like, it's always just been about between you and me. And like, all he can do is smile, because like the back and forth between them, like they're basically at war with each other, and like they're dragging in and using other people for their war. That's the thing where DeCourcy, you know, he even said, because obviously for Chris, it's like, yeah, the only thing I'm worried about is solving Raina's case. And he's like, yeah, that's one of my goals, but I've got it's not my only goal. So it shows you, like, because whether he'll admit it or not, taking down Jackie it's his number. Like, he wants revenge. He wants Jackie to pay because he got sucked up into Jackie's BS, and because of that, he was warned about it, but he got sucked up in it, and now it's like he just wants to take Jackie down. And it's like, whether he'll ever admit it or not, it takes priority over the whole Raina thing. It's like, it's not like, I don't know. I want to give him the credit to say it's not, but it seems like that is his main drive now. At least he was able to say it's not my only goal. At least he's willing to admit that and not kind of keep up airs about like it being him trying to do like the righteous thing. It's like, no, well, I'm sure for him it's like taking down Jackie is like the righteous and right thing to do as well, you know, because he's just too much of a bastard to just kind of keep running amok and doing whatever he does, because other people always pay the consequences for his actions. So it's going to be interesting because we do see like Chris kind of getting sucked into like his old whatever, you know, Jackie's planning. And the question is, who's going to be the scapegoat? Because it's like, your boy Tony, who's kind of taking the fall for this. It's like, he's got a wife and kids, and now he's kind of on paid leave and stuff, or at least he's on leave, and I don't think he's getting paid. So it's like that. So it's like, yeah, don't worry, it's not going to be Tony, it's not going to be you, but I'm going to need your help finding someone to kind of take the fall for this. So we'll see how that ultimately ends up playing out. I didn't even talk about it. The Corsi and Karen situation was interesting. He's like, I'm the Corsi warrior. She's like, I know who you are. I always remember the name of the fuck-ups. And so it's the back and forth between them about her just like not liking him and the way things kind of went down. Like, obviously the Corsi is trying to say like, oh yeah, like there's a, you know, obviously connecting Jackie to the Holly Gunner thing, but obviously not saying his name, but being like, you know, it's an investigation, so I can't tell you what's what. But basically she made it damn clear like, oh, like, you know, because she was like, you step into someone that's more powerful than you, and he was like, don't ever poke someone that's more powerful than you. He was like, well, you know, you can't do anything but poke up. And she was like, next time you don't come to me until I call for you. It was like, yo, that was kind of some, like, you know, you at least try to be like, I think that just shows you the state of everything. Like, everyone's out to get theirs, and it's like, your BS isn't going to drag me down. I'm here to do me, and I'm not going to get caught up in your BS. Also, it's like, I'm at a higher position. Like, who the hell are you rolling up on talking to like that, trying to corner me and get your way? It's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. So we'll see on that front as well. Because even Siobhan being like, you should avoid a lot of white, like, what was it? She was saying something along the veins of, they're just some white whales you shouldn't mess with, Ahab. Speaking of Jackie, I like that situation where Jenny was in bed and she was actually kind of like trying to wrap her arms around her. I was like, oh, like that was kind of neat that they were kind of in a better place like that in that regard. But he kind of rolls over and kind of killed the moose. So she got on the couch. She's watching something. She's under the covers. I'm like, is she about to? And it's like, he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And she gets startled. And he was like, you know, all the things of like, oh yeah, you'll go blind and you'll get hair on your palm. And later on being like, so who were you thinking about? And she's like, what? He's like, why does it know? He's like, no, is her husband, I need to know. She's like, Pierce Brosnan. And he was like, really? I mean, that's disappointing. He's like, I mean, Brad Pitt, I can understand. Nolte, sure, but oh, come on. And she's like, fine, you. And even he was legitimately taken aback by like, wait, what? Oh, I didn't. Oh, you. Oh. Like, it was just that shocking to me. And then he just says, okay. I was like, wow. Even I was kind of shocked by that, because it's like, despite everything, she still got the hots for you, dude, which is kind of crazy. Not unless she was, I think she I think that's probably also why she didn't want to say initially, because she was kind of embarrassed to admit, yes, I was thinking about you when I was, you know, doing my thing. So that was interesting. There's also the conversation about, you know, Benny trying to get Jenny to talk to her mom. And it's like, Grandma keeps calling, and it's like, well, you know, you need to talk to her someday. And it's like, yeah, but someday is not today. She was avoiding her, because I'm still unclear whether or not Benny knows. Because Benny later on brings up, is like, so do you know what happened to your dad? It's like, well, your grandma would say he's dead, but he might be somewhere for all I care. I don't know. But she's like, did you ever think about reaching out, trying to find him so you can tell him, show him who you are and kind of like where you're at, like who you've become essentially. But her saying that makes me wonder, does Benny know? I don't know. I don't know if because Jenny didn't, at least from the confines of what we've seen in the show, Jenny never told her last season about what happened to her. We as the audience know. Obviously, we found out that Jackie knows, so I don't know if she knows that that's the reason why. I I don't know if Benny knows that that's why Jenny doesn't have much love for her mom. But obviously she learns from like her aunt, like, yeah, your mom's sick, so it's like, oh, how much of a disgrace you are to blah blah blah. It's like, I guess the aunt doesn't know about what went down between her brother-in-law and Jenny, but reluctantly she has to go, because I think the only reason why Benny's like that is because, I mean, and we see it this episode, like, you know, Jenny singing and Benny's like, oh, you should, like, oh, you have a really nice voice. She's like, oh, you just saying that to be nice? It's like, no, like, would I bullshit you? She's like, you know, it's like, who would I sing for? She's like, well, don't sing for anyone but yourself, you know? And it's like, I'm loving it. I'm like, I love that their relationship is what it is. I like that they have definitely grown closer, that they are in a better place than they were last season. Sadly, I'm so sad that it took like a tragedy like that to end up ultimately bringing them together, you know? But reluctantly, Jenny goes over there and it's like, oh, this woman's going to be an issue for me, even when she's in the dirt. And she's complaining, saying that, like, because the whole thing was like, oh, she's asking for a priest for last rites. And it's like, oh, she's trying to get a hip surgery, which I love. Benny's like, oh, you must have really gone senile if you're thinking that. And she's like, watch your mouth, you little bitch. Just like, oh, that high school education joke. She's like, yeah, that there's a risk with it all. And then it turns out Father Doyle shows up. And obviously, like, Jenny just had no reason to stick around. But I even love that when Father Doyle leaves, he's like, nothing could kill... surgery's not going to kill that woman. Even a stake to the heart couldn't do it. But she's like, oh, you have nothing to say to me? He's like, honestly, I screwed up. I do apologize. And it's like, you know... He wants her to... it's like, oh, you've been coming around, so I know you're back, you know, trying to get your faith back. So... do come to Mass this Sunday. I promise you I won't fuck you over. And she was almost like, whoa, oh, because she didn't expect him to say that. So I also thought it was so sad when she showed up, like, that. It's like, oh, yeah, like that little girl singing. It's like, oh, yeah, this teacher, is she good? I mean, is she patient? It's like, yeah, she's, I've been professionally singing since I was 6. You know, it's like, yeah, she's good. You're planning on getting your daughter to sign up, your kid to sign up for this. And Jenny felt so bad. She was like, yeah, like, she just doesn't have much confidence in herself. I was like, no, Jenny. And she just up and leaves. I was like, no, Jenny, that's so sad. And she goes to church and she, you know, she's singing in an empty church. I'm like, oh, Jenny, I get it. Cause you're like, oh, this is a lady who teaches little kids. And here I am. Because I'm sure it makes her think about the fact is when she initially like went to college last season, it was like, obviously like a whole bunch of teenager / young adult. She's a older married woman going back to college, which, you know, I'm sure it kind of was looked at even weirdly because this is in the 90s. So I'm sure present day that doesn't mean diddly squat. Plenty of people go back to college in their older years. But hell, I think even my mom did. If I'm not mistaken, because I was like in high school when my mom went back to school to get like some other degrees and stuff like that. So, you know, it's not that crazy of a thing. But it was just, you know, I'm sure it was kind of like makes Jenny just feel even more self-conscious, which you're like, oh. Also, like, legitimately, I was surprised to see Rosa and Father Doyle. So I'm curious to see where we go with this whole Rosa storyline. Is this supposed to be like a bridging the gap of like Jenny forgiving her mom for everything? Because she was even saying like, oh, I'm going to sue you and get the house back and blah, blah, blah. It's like talking mad shit. So it's like, yeah. I think maybe she was trying to invite Jenny there to apologize, but she's too damn prideful. So I think that kind of got in the way. We'll see. I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front. Also, the Father Doyle front, because it's like, well, you know, he kind of failed her last season, but let's see if he can kind of make up for it this season or not. So it's going to be interesting on that front. Another aspect of the situation. Oh, really quickly, let's circle back to Grace really quickly. Kind of showing you how badass she is, that she was telling that dude, like, Isaac, I need you to clean off those walls. Like, who you talking? And she's like, I've been threatened by every gang, so here's some money. Get the supplies. Also, give me some candy corn. You better bring me back my change. I was like, yo! Once again, just like Nano run shit type of thing. I like that. Even when home dude James was stepping to her about the rent, and then Anton closed the door. He's like, yo, you rolling up on my mom? He's like, dude, Ton, I swear to God, I didn't know that was your mom. I was like, yo. And it was so interesting, you know, because the thing is, people will tell you that. Like, obviously, it's like, even the baddest criminals still love their mom. So for him, it's like, Mom, what did I tell you about? Like, I gave you pepper spray. She's like, I ain't going to roll around with like a weapon. The fact of the matter is, I've got God on my side. It's like, God didn't answer the door. It's like, well, didn't he? Because he brought you in my life. So, it is a situation that, yeah, you're out there doing criminal stuff, but you still, obviously you want to, because he's like, yeah, like, Mom, like, living in the area we are, like, these people, like, some people will slit your throat just for, like, that rent stuff. So it's like, but it is this interesting thing because she's trying to get him signed up in like the Navy and just what that can mean. Because for her, she wants him to have as many opportunities as possible to get up out of his neighborhood and, buy your own house. But he's like, no, buy you a house. Like, because he wants to, I guess that's why he's doing what he's doing, is like hustling to get as much money as possible, doing whatever he got to do to get his family. Like, for one, to I'm sure anyone like growing up in that will probably think like, okay, this is the best way to make money. I don't have to wait for it. The money comes to me and I can get me and my family out of this neighborhood. Plus, I can make some good money for myself. So I'm sure that's how Anton looks at it. But it seems like legitimately what he does do is trying to be there for his family, in particular his mom. So it's one of those complicated things of like, yeah, it's shitty what he does, but at the same time, it's like, not necessarily that it comes from a good place, but it is a thing like you can kind of understand. I'm sure there is, I mean, it's probably more so for himself than it is for his mom, but still it plays some role in it, so. Then another side of things is Kathy. Obviously, she's suffering on the business side of things because of like everything that happened with. They even talk about it early in the episode because she's talking with a lady and it's like, "Oh, you're from Charlestown?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Yeah, I'm from there. Like, I got a husband from there too." And it's like, "Oh, he's in jail." It's like, "Oh, in a similar situation." The way she talks about it, it seems like she doesn't visit her husband anymore. Just because I think for her it just became too hard of holding out hope of like things working out. So we don't know if the kid, I would assume I guess she just stopped bringing the kids to him too and stuff like that because it's like, oh, he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. So trying to find a way to move forward. But it's like, yeah, like the salon isn't doing well because customers stopped rolling by, which even Annie was like, oh, if you don't have to pay me. And she's like, I don't want your charity. I don't want your pity. Because she was also like, then I'll quit. That way, like, you get to keep some of the money, Kathy. And it's like, once those customers realize what idiots they're being and their hair is shit, you can hire me back. And she's like, okay. I love that Annie kind of went in for a hug and then like Kathy kind of walked past her and Annie kind of had to play it off. I was like, oh, come on. She's trying to have a heart-to-heart moment with you. But once again, it's like Kathy's not the biggest of wearing her heart on her sleeve. But what was interesting, though, is like when like Jimmy corners her like that, I was like, yo, once again, it's bad enough you rolling up and checking in on him. Like, what are you expecting? Even she's like, what are you trying to do? White knight? Be the white knight in this situation after you screwed over our family? Like, and he's trying to make up for it. It's like, are you trying to help us? Or are you really just trying to alleviate your own guilt for literally turning on your brother and basically getting him locked up while you got to escape free? But obviously he's trying to do what he's doing. Like, here's 10 grand. It's like, you want me to, I think ultimately what she does is rather than take the money, she asked him to like give her some of the heroin so she can sell it herself. Because I think for her, it's like, oh, you teach a fisherman to fish. You can get a fish for someone, but you teach them like to fish, they'll be able to fish for the rest of their life. I'm butchering the metaphor and the adage, but you get what I'm trying to say. I think for her, it's like that 10 grand is only going to get me so far, and I'm not going to constantly want to keep coming to you for help with this. So hook me up with your supplier, get me some of that heroin. I'll sell it that way. I can keep some cash flow coming. I think maybe that's her justification for it. But regardless of it all, Jimmy is saying that when it's all said and done, you are, I think it's still going to, I think she'd rather work for the cash and kind of take a handout from him. I think maybe that's more so what it is. But Jimmy is saying that regardless of anything, he used that story from like her from her wedding by being like, yeah, my dad threw me out, but your dad came over and it's like, oh, you're mad at him, right? And it's like, but actually you're not, because no matter what happens, you're stuck with each other. It's like, Kathy, you and me, we are family. We're stuck with each other. So I want you to make sure, like, these people you're selling to could just as easily kill you to take what you have. So you got to protect yourself. So, and she even having to explain it to Kit, because Kit's like, why are you even talking to him? It's like, sometimes there's things in life you just have to do even if you don't want to. So she needs money to take care of it, because she says she's obviously the salon's in the situation it is. They came and claimed the house, her cars. So it's like they're on tough times. So it's like, I need to get some money flowing in so I can take care of me and the kids. It's all I can do, so it's definitely gonna be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front as we, getting dragged into some BS that Jimmy did. We'll see. Like, I'm curious, is Jimmy going to get away this season? Like, I'm sure all the BS he's doing is going to catch up with him. I don't think he's ever going to get away. I think karma's going to come back to bite him in the ass. Hopefully Kathy doesn't get caught up in the middle of it, or maybe she ultimately ends up being his undoing, just kind of a final deuces and middle fingers to him for all the problem. I mean, everything is they're in the situation they're in right now because of him. So we'll see. Like, there's so many moving pieces and everything's so interconnected. I'm so curious to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. God, I'd actually forgotten to actually even talk about it really quickly. The Kelvin and Marco's conversation, because he's like, yo, I got like money, I got this, I could go to BU, but it's going to cost me a lot of money, you know, tuition, the books and everything. It's like, okay. He's like, yeah, so I'm going to have to let Ton know. And like, Kelvin's like, don't let him know. It's like, what? Yeah, I gotta let him know. So it's like, yeah, but if you let him know that you're leaving, he's most likely going to have you pay back the money that you would be making for him, because he's losing money if you're not in that corner. He's like, but even if I play, it's like, nah, when your opportunity comes, just leave. I'll do what I can to straighten things out with my brother. Fact of the matter is, I think that's going to come back in a big way, the whole Marco and Anton thing, especially considering Marco's the one that dumped the drugs and the car and everything. So I'm curious, is that going to turn into a thing where Anton's like, nah, you're too much of a flight risk. Plus, you up here trying to leave. Plus, he was also there when Kelvin got, like, you know, potentially arrested too. So I was like, I don't know. We do see at the end that Siobhan was able to get Kelvin out, and he's able to kind of join like the visual march that they were having. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.